All right. Hello and welcome to the Gradient Works Expert Q&A. I'm really excited to have Lily Yoon on here with us. So Lily, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Hayes. First of all, really excited to be a part of this. So thank you for the introduction. Like Hayes mentioned, my name is Lily Yoon. I currently live in Austin, Texas with my golden retriever named Albus Dumbledog and my husband. Also a UT graduate, so hook 'em horns. And in regards to work experience and my background, I've been an individual contributor as a sales development representative and an inside sales representative, managed an SDR team, and also have been a director of a sales team as well. So, um, in regards to those roles, I've been in a part of three different startups, and so I'm actually a part on my third startup right now.
Cool. Okay. All right. So we're going to really focus on the conversation around SDRs for this conversation today. So I want to start by, I guess, settling a little bit of maybe it's just a terminology debate, but in this industry, you hear a lot of SDR, MDR, BDR, I even heard ADR or XDR. Like, what do you see as the difference between all of those roles, and what do you think sets the SDR role apart?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's so many different terms for similar roles and it really depends upon the type of organization you have. Um, I've been I've been in a role where I started as an MDR, so market development representative, and then we later on job itself was the same, and then we just changed our titles to sales development representative. And
Right.
so, I mean, it's really what your organization wants to achieve by changing the role itself or the title. Um, but I mean, I think a lot of conversations that I've had, we usually refer MDR for more of like a inbound role because it means market development representative. So following up on marketing campaign leads being their role, and then sales development being more focused on outbounding and setting up demo appointments from cold outreach.
Got it. Okay. So, I mean, that really ties into, if the SDR role is focused on the cold outreach and kind of the outbounding, what do you see as the, two or three core SDR responsibilities? What are they focused on each and every day?
Yeah, so I'd say top three would be focusing on activities. So cold calling, emailing, prospecting. And then from there, demo sets, making sure they're setting a qualified demo appointments for their account executives. And then making sure the demo happens is another huge part of their core responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of overlooked a lot in this conversation. We think of SDRs as, making cold calls and doing all of that, but and working the phones and sending emails all day. But there is this core responsibility to set the demo and make sure the demo is attended. So a couple of things there. You know, what do you think that an SDR really needs to focus on in order to achieve that, right? To make sure the demo is qualified and to make sure that that the prospect actually shows up.
Yeah, there's a lot of tips and tricks you can start doing to make sure you increase your show rate and then also your activity to demo set
Mhm.
conversions. And that's my team in particular, we do a lot of especially since we're all virtual now, we do a lot of Zoom
Mhm.
meetings. And we talk about specifically one topic, whether it be, hey, what are you doing right now to increase your show rate? What type of follow up
Mhm.
activity are you doing? So, for example, my team will, after they set a demo, send a calendar invite and then always make sure that the calendar invite, if possible, is accepted while they have the prospect on the phone call. And then
Mhm.
sending reminders the day before the demo appointment, and then also maybe 15 to 20 minutes beforehand. That includes the Zoom link, so it's easy for them to hop on the call.
Cool. That makes a ton of sense. So let's let's kind of step back a little bit and talk about the process of actually building up an SDR team. And one of the core things about doing that, obviously, is hiring and getting the right folks in the door. So, what would you say are some of the attributes that are leading indicators of SDR success that you look for when you're hiring?
Yeah, there's a few qualities that I look for. Coachability is one of the biggest attributes. And the reason why I look for that is if someone is very coachable, they're able to take the feedback that's given and implement it pretty immediately. And that can change someone's month overall in hitting quota as an SDR. And that can also impact how if an account executive will hit their quota. Um, and so also coachability includes the fact of being open to change as well. So adaptability is another factor that I look for. Are they okay with adapting pretty quickly based off of feedback and being open to it? And then making the decision based off of their own experience. This is actually helpful or this isn't working for me.
Mhm. So focusing on those kinds of, coachability, adaptability, make a ton of sense. How do you look for that? I mean, is there an interview question that you ask? Is there something that you just kind of sense? Like, how do you actually evaluate a candidate for those types of qualities?
Yeah, so there is a question, and it's more so of a exercise that we do with our candidates.
Mm-hmm.
We ask them to do a mock call, and we don't really expect them to be like product experts or anything, but the really important part is seeing if after the mock call is done, they're able to take the feedback that's given and apply at least some form of that feedback
Mm-hmm.
to the second version of that mock call. Um, it's surprising because some people are very quick at adapting and taking that feedback, and some people struggle a little bit. But even people who struggle, that's a sign of someone who's willing to try and is coachable. They just need a little bit more time and more practice.
Okay. I like that. That makes a lot of sense. So, obviously one of the biggest challenges, or maybe not obviously, but I certainly think one of the biggest challenges is that very top of the funnel with candidates, is making sure that you've got folks to talk to. Any recruiting tips and tricks to how you ensure that you've got that consistent top of funnel for candidates?
Yeah, it's so my experience has been pretty vast. I've been very fortunate where I've had a full recruiting team source candidates for me. In my current role, we're very early stages, Series A, and so I've been doing a lot of the recruiting, like lead sourcing, candidate sourcing myself. And
Mhm.
so, the thing that I've noticed is your network of colleagues or friends, they are going to be the people who will recommend based off of their own experience and interactions. And so that's what I always go for first, asking my general network of like, hey, do you know of anyone who's looking for a SDR role or an inside sales role?
Mhm.
And then from there, of course, having an interview, making sure it's a multi-step process. That way it's not just one person interviewing with this candidate for 30 minutes and, making that decision if they're going to be a good fit or not. But it also gives the candidate an opportunity to not just meet one person in the company, but also meet multiple people and make sure on their side that that's where they want to build their career.
Okay, got it. Um, so, let's move from the hiring. Let's say you find a candidate you like, you get them hired. So, one of the muscles that I've seen need to be exercised a lot in SDR organizations is a quick onboard, a successful onboarding, a quick ramp. How do you design a repeatable process for onboarding and ramping SDRs?
Yeah. So with onboarding and ramping SDRs, having a set schedule, and I still do this to this day, is whenever I onboard a team, have my calendar up and I start outlining all the different types of trainings this person will need to be the most successful and make sure that it makes sense. Like all the pieces need to come together for it to make one big puzzle picture. And it's the same with ramping someone new who's coming into your organization who has no idea what exactly all the benefits are, what the competitors do. And so outlining it on the calendar first helps, but then also before that, knowing what type of training that they need is going to be helpful to put on the calendar.
So a couple of things on that. How do you determine what you think they need? What are some of the core things that are there consistent, specific types of training that you would, no matter what your company, you would always want to have for an SDR?
Yeah, good question. So I would always want to have mock call and
Mhm.
pitch training, objection handling training. Um, Tailored email training is also one that I find is very valuable. A good majority of a sales rep's time is researching, tailoring their emails, and then leveraging their emails during their cold calls. And
Mhm.
so those are the main ones that I would say. But then also, it's important to make sure after you have each new hire group go through, maybe at the 2 week mark and then the 1 month mark, have a check in with them and get feedback around what their experience was like, and get an idea if there's anything in the current flow that didn't make sense that you should be updating for your next onboarding group.
Got it. And I know in your previous roles, you've been at a lot of startups. You've also, I know, had some experience at some very large organizations. Usually there's a training and enablement capability that those organizations bring to the table. How do you recommend working with a learning and development team or a sales training team in your role as an SDR leader? How do you try to integrate with those teams?
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to have a learning and development team, it's great, because they're a partner and you can definitely leverage a lot of their knowledge. And for me personally, it was amazing, because we would have weekly meetings and have a list of topics ready to go to talk about what we can do for ongoing training for our SDRs, but then also make sure we're revamping and updating content for our new hires as well. So weekly meetings, and then being able to just know that you can check in with each other and keep the ongoing tab of asking like what's going on with certain projects. But working on those projects together is very impactful, as well as knowing what's changing, what's coming down the pipe from learning and development teams.
Okay. All right. Well, so I've really appreciated your time today and all your insights into the SDR role. And so thank you very much for sharing all your experiences. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ace. Thanks for having me.